Welcome everyone. We're live on BerryFlow Upstream number 46. We're calling this one Milk, and not necessarily because you need to keep up on your calcium intake, but because we had a very interesting Milken Institute conference for which the BlackBerry CEO John Chen and a couple other BlackBerry representatives were also there as well. I want to introduce our cast here today before we get started. As always, we've got Crackberry's Chris, formerly known as Blaze. How are you doing, everybody?
Good.
Good.
Along with us as well, we have Darius Stokes. How you doing, D?
What's up, man? What's up?
You kind of were on hiatus there, man. Welcome back. Good to have you back on air.
Yeah, I've been busy the last couple of Sundays. But no, I'm happy to be back, man. I've been staying in tune. I'm loving the conversations. It's always like great conversations I want to be a part of when I'm not there. But I've enjoyed them definitely.
It's good, man. Definitely great to have you back. And you say you're being busy. That's better than not being busy, right?
Right.
Like our other guest, Alex. How you doing, Alex?
Doing good. Wait, I'm not busy? What? I keep myself busy. I'm doing good. Doing good.
Great to hear. And Brandon, how about you, man? How's it going? You staying warm?
Yeah, man. Like it's 26 degrees today in Toronto, so finally, I walk out for like 2 seconds and have a sunburn already. So
Wow.
there you go. It's a
A
testament
sunburn
to
in
how
26-degree
test.
weather.
That's a testament to how white I am.
You might need to get some I'm gonna send you some sunscreen, some SPF like 80. That's
All
so
our
funny.
stateside viewers are completely blown right now. They're like 26 degrees, sunburn. What?
Oh yeah, 26 degrees. I think in Fahrenheit. What is that? That's like 78 or something, 76 around there.
Yeah, somewhere around there.
Oh,
Makes you feel any
I'm thinking
better.
like
I'm
actually
sitting in
26 degrees.
94-degree weather.
Oh man, Chris, that's how it is here. Like it's super hot in Florida. I'm driving. I went down to like Orlando this weekend, and like my right arm burned because the sun coming in from the window. So I got there and I'm like half cooked, half not cooked. Mom's like, you need to go do something about that. I'm like, yeah, I'm trying.
Tan the other side of your body.
But how do you do that? Like, do I put a towel on one side and just like let the other side cook or air? It's ridiculous, man. Maybe with some of our healthcare conversation, we can kind of get to maybe a point where there's actually a solution to our problem there, right? Maybe our mobile device will be like, time to flip over. You've been cooked on one side too long. We have a pretty interesting topic list. As I said, we have the Milken Institute conference. It's a yearly thing. Previously, we had Torsten Hines go to it formally, and it was a really good conversation that he had there as well. So, tossing it in, there was two panels. We had Mark Wilson, Chief Evangelist. He was there for a marketing kind of collaboration conversation and panel. And we had John Chen, Dr. Patrick Soon-Shiong, and a couple other healthcare specialists there on the other side talking about healthcare in the digital age. We will touch on some of those bits, but I want to start out talking about some interviews that were done during this time at the Milken Institute. John Chen did a really great job working with some of the different news media outlets there to start, again, talking about the message, getting BlackBerry's name out in the forefront, and again, behind kind of what they're doing there in terms of the medical space, IoT, security, etc. So we had heard in an interview with, I think, CNBC that there was talks of something brewing in terms of the application ecosystem and part of that app strategy. We have Amazon. It's a stopgap, right? It's definitely got us more access to some of those applications. But what do you guys think? After hearing John Chen say that there may be something brewing, what could be brewing that's actually going to solve the problem, right? We've seen very recently Windows 10 actually take on the ability to port over Android and iOS applications. And it's funny that The Verge actually did their article, and The Verge
Yeah,
basically copied
that
and
was
pasted
great.
the BlackBerry Playbook press release from 2011 and just swapped out BlackBerry for Microsoft.
For QNX, or yeah, I think they switched QNX out for Microsoft. Oh my, that was the funniest thing, and all the comments were like, "Oh, that was like 5 years coming. Like, how long were you waiting, holding off on that to pull that one off?" And it's
It's
real clever.
probably been drafted for like
Yeah,
who knows
yeah,
how
yeah.
long. But no, it's an honest conversation, right? It was an honest question from the representative at CNBC. It's like, what are you going to do about the application problem, right? That's your quote unquote Achilles heel. So I want to pass the buck off around here. What do you guys think is an actual strategy to conquer the app problem for BlackBerry? John Chen kind of hinted at maybe there's a new frontier of applications coming, and that's where we want to be, not necessarily on the consumer side. So what are you guys' thoughts?
My personal opinion is that they're probably going to try and figure out a way to get more Android apps on the OS, whether that means kind of hyper Android runtime, if you will, or maybe even just a full Android OS with specific BlackBerry gestures and the hub built in. So you still get that BlackBerry 10 experience, but you also get to have that native, Android app experience. Because John Chen was mentioning that their Achilles heel, like you mentioned, has been applications, and in almost every OS that we see over time, for instance, like Mac OS previously. If you look at their laptops, the biggest thing holding them back was that they couldn't get specific programs on those computers. And so it wasn't until recently, when more people have started to use them, that we start seeing applications built for Mac OS and PC. And so I guess it's just kind of, that notion of if the developers won't come to you, go to where the developers are and where those apps are. To make your user base happy. And I was mentioning before the podcast started, that I think personally, if they brought that BlackBerry 10 experience on an Android OS, I think 75% of BlackBerry 10 users would be content with that, and I think you'll always have that 25% who really want to stay away from the Android operating system. And I think it's just, at this point, it's a matter of balancing.
Some who don't even want the Android runtime on their device right now.
Yeah,
So.
exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
They wish they could turn it off, disable it. They're like, I never use it. I don't want to waste the resources. I need just remove it. But yeah, I definitely agree with you, Brandon. I kind of want to break down. So some of you might be wondering what, Windows Phone, what they're truly doing with that, as compared to BlackBerry. So BlackBerry, yes, they have the runtime, so it's kind of like a virtual environment. So when they had Android people porting their app over before, it was still an Android app, but it was running within, all it was really putting an Android app within BlackBerry world. Whereas what Windows is planning on doing at least, is actually porting the porting the code over to be like a genuine Windows app, just allowing a Windows app, it's never going to run as well as a raw built Windows app, but they're actually using the code so it is genuinely kind of a Windows app rather than running any type of runtime. So the benefit for BlackBerry is, well, we could just embrace the Android ecosystem a little bit more, whereas Windows is still totally reliant on developers. For people to port over the apps, you need the developer of Candy Crush, of Snapchat. Snapchat, for some reason, hates Windows and BlackBerry. He's never going to port over Snapchat, even if Windows makes it beyond easy, whatever. He's still not going to do it. So there are still some developers that they will not do anything with it. So BlackBerry is still in a unique position, even though we're not talking about iOS right now or anything. But yes, I think we're just going to move more towards Android, keep BlackBerry security there, and we really don't know exactly what's going to happen, but it's definitely a unique position to be in. Less, developer requirement for their route.
I've been jokingly saying it for like the past couple of months in the forums and just on Twitter and stuff like that. Everybody's like, "Well, what's the solution?" And I just keep saying Android, and that's it. I just leave it at that. It's Android. They're going to do something with Android. Whether or not that actually equates to them essentially releasing, the possibility of their own Android device, because as Brandon mentioned, they're taking some of those experiences, those BlackBerry 10 specific experiences, and bringing them over to Android. So, there is the possibility that they could essentially go ahead and launch their own Android device at some point in time, or maybe they're going to go that hypervisor route, and this is the hypervisor road is kind of where I get lost, because taking the Android route specifically and basically building out a device that comes with BlackBerry's own version of Android onto it, and not keeping the BlackBerry 10 hardware is realistically the simplest solution. You could do that. You could basically bring some of those BlackBerry 10 experiences to Android, have your own version of Android, have everything available, access to the Google Play Store, stuff like that. That's the easiest solution. However, when it comes to, like, say, for example, the hypervisor solution or a dramatically improved Android runtime solution, that's where things still get a little bit sketchy, because of the fact that you still have to basically make good with Google at that point in time. If you go with the virtualized solution or anything like that, chances of Google actually being able to say, you know, yeah, you can run the Google Play services on here is pretty much slim to none. You know, you only have that option if you're running pure Android at that point in time to be able to go ahead and access those Google services. And realistically, what it comes down to, that's what BlackBerry needs. The Amazon App Store is fine for a lot of people. However, you know, in order for that Android solution to actually work, people are going to need access to the Google Play Store. You know, because that's part of the problem with the Android runtime now is the fact that it doesn't have access to the Google Play Store, at least
Yeah.
not in a simple solution. You know, there are ways out there that sort of help alleviate the situation, but they're not 100% solutions. You can't just say to like your parents or whatever, you know, you have to be invested in the solution in order to be able to go ahead and access them, and that's the biggest problem with the Android runtime right now. So I don't necessarily know which way that they're going to go, whether it be the hypervisor route or possibly, you know, launching their own Android device, but something clearly John Chen has something in mind that he's working on. So
Yeah,
you know, hopefully we'll see the result of that at some point in time.
yeah, and you
And
bring
hopefully
up
it doesn't piss people off.
and you bring up a good point there. I mean, for instance, for BlackBerry to just put on the Google Play, that would never happen because in terms of the grand scheme of things, Google's not really making the majority of their money from app downloads and people paying for apps. They're making most of their money from the entire ecosystem, you know, the data that they get from users and selling those to company. So having a partnership with BlackBerry where they just have a Play Store on the BlackBerry without BlackBerry actually investing in that OS, it's not going to happen because it's not beneficial to Google.
Yep. Yeah, they definitely need a partner. They need to expand the partnership. Keep in mind, like, they already have some type of partnership with Google, so it's easier to further, like, work with a partnership, an existing partnership, to do more with it, so they're in a better position than that. It's not like they're just going like, oh, I hope that Google will work with us. Just like what Chen was saying, you know, Apple, we're more than happy to work with Apple, but it's up to them if they really want to go that route. Um,
I think
BlackBerry seems pretty open right now, right? John
Yeah.
Chen's like, I'll partner with Apple if they need help on security, and they do.
Yeah.
Android as well. I mean, Google's already invested in it. What are your thoughts on it, Darius? Do you think that there's really a clear strategy ahead in terms of the application problem?
I think there's a strategy. You know, do we know it? No. I think answer is just simply you have to get Google services, but you know, as Chris has mentioned, it's a long shot, but it's possible. You know, I mean, I feel like the hypervisor thing could, you know, could surface, but me honestly, I sit back right now, look at the situation. I'm like, well, how does iOS survive without Google services? In the same sense, if you pay attention to the Apple ecosystem, a lot of it is really dependent on Google. Like a lot of it really is, even though Apple has an extensive ecosystem, like nonetheless, in terms of applications, right? It's like with Google, they've been so embedded in terms of the mobile industry when it comes to applications, when it comes to those use of services that you need, whether it be maps or things along that. You kind of have to look at, well, how has Apple, you know, been able to get by and succeed and do well? But I feel like BlackBerry, and especially with John Chen, he always says, you know, you have to find that niche. You know, I'm not necessarily here to kill the competition. I'm here to actually work with them. You know, and I'm here to actually take notes from them and say, okay, I can make this work over here. Clearly, with you know QNX, there are so many different type of solutions that they can do. I just feel like with BlackBerry, like the possibilities are almost endless. It's just which one do we feel is the best option for us, and which one do we push forward with in terms of supporting that platform. And I think it's like I don't like to pinpoint. I don't know exactly what it is. I just know that they have something, like they always have. We can go back numerous upstreams, right? We're like, well, what do you think they're gonna do? And we don't know, but they come with a plan, and it works. I just feel like we know all these options. We know all the possibilities they have, and it's just a matter of which one they feel like is going to be the one they can put all their cards in on and say, hey, we can get something back from it.
Yeah, I mean, Apple does, they have their own kind of services, like breaking down what they actually are. They have like their own Maps equivalent, and same thing with Microsoft. So like when someone ports an app over to Microsoft, you have to then use Bing Maps. You can't port your app over to Microsoft and still use Google Maps. You have to use their services. So that's
Right.
how Apple gets away with it. Along with Google, like they understand we have to build a native app for Apple. So they do a workaround with that where they're still probably getting data from that, but it's also one of the big players. They understand Apple's big. We need to make Google Maps. We need to make our major Google apps available on Apple. They don't really have to say that about BlackBerry or Windows Phone. So we're really in the problem where there just aren't enough users where Google feels the need to actually develop a native platform. So if that's the case, then we then have to partnership with Google or Apple in order to get those apps.
Well, that's simply what it is. I think that's the only thing. It's not necessarily that we're unable to use Google services. I mean, you have these small developers who are, finding these cracks and exposing it and showing you that it's possible. That's why I say it's so many possibilities. It's just a matter of, which one they decide they want to take. Because I think at the end of the day, John Chen has a lot of pride with BlackBerry, and he doesn't want to use any of these other companies as a crutch. He just wants to use these other companies more as leverage to say, hey, you should really start putting this way because, or start providing your services, over here, because one, I think my insight in terms of platforms that people choose later on in the future will be what they feel like is most productive for them. It's gonna fall back away from the whole brand thing, and I think he's really trying to get those other CEOs, those other companies on board, and have them understand that if you want to secure your future, you better start going across the board and stop being selfish. It was cool for the first 8 years or so, but now that the mobile game has changed and developed so much, you really have to start kind of sharing the wealth, and letting people know that you're able to extend or give them a hand and
Yeah.
pretty much get it out there for them.
I
But
feel like there's.
it
Sorry,
comes down.
you can go.
Go
You go.
ahead, Brandon.
I feel like there's some parallels between Google and BlackBerry in terms of where they want to find themselves. I mean, Google, as we've seen, they're trying to take more of a security focus and trying to really break into that workspace. And as we know, BlackBerry's already got the experience there. So I feel like there is a potential, you know, universe where BlackBerry could potentially go to Google and say, look, we've got the enterprise here. We just don't have the apps, and we know you want to get a foothold in the enterprise space. So is there some middle ground we can come to where we can still retain that security aspect, but also allow you to have some skin in the game in terms of enterprise? And I think that's a completely viable situation if done correctly.
And for the record, guys, Brandon does want to break into your workspace. He's trying right now. Blaze, what were you going to toss in there?
I just want to say to Darius' point about how does Apple survive without Google services? Basically, Apple survives because they, it all comes down to the back end of the systems. Realistically, when you take a look at the grand scheme of things, Google has Google services that they basically run on it. And so, all of these apps and all these games and all these things are basically communicating back to Google. So Google is offering up these back-end systems, and Apple is essentially doing the exact same thing. So Apple has iCloud, which we could argue the security problems there till whatever. But the fact of the matter is that service exists, and it is substantially useful in terms of the whole Apple ecosystem because you're backing up a lot of your data there. You're backing up your notes, your game data, so on and so forth. All that stuff is there. So Google is providing these Google Play services. Apple has their own cloud infrastructure that they're using through iCloud and all of the backup measures and communication measures and Game Center and stuff like that. Meanwhile, when you take a look at BlackBerry's situation, BlackBerry has been actively killing off a lot of that stuff. The Games app itself is gone. It doesn't exist. It's done. They bought a company that basically offered sort of the same solution as what Apple did and what Google Play does, but they essentially killed it off. That doesn't exist anymore. It's no longer there. And now we see these BBM connected games. What are those BBM connected games using? Well, yeah, they're using BBM, but they're also using Google Play for cloud storage. And part of that as well, even in terms of like the the Amazon ecosystem. What does Amazon have? Amazon has Game Circle and cloud backup storage and stuff like that. We don't see a lot of that stuff in terms of BlackBerry. Like I said, BlackBerry has been actively killing off a lot of those additional services because they're not considering them useful in terms of their security and enterprise focus at this point in time. But realistically, that's a part of the reason why Apple doesn't necessarily need Google Play services. You know, that's how Apple survives without Google Play services, because Google Play services, while they are limited on some Apple devices, Apple has all these other secondary services of their own. And same with Amazon. Amazon has Game Circle and cloud backup and stuff like that, which, by the way, doesn't necessarily fully work the way that it should on BlackBerry either. So we have the Amazon App Store, but when it comes to stuff like Game Circle and stuff like that, we don't have 100% downright access to that, which is a problem in its own. Like, you know, if you download a game from the Amazon App Store, which is absolutely great, how do you actually keep track of your scores and stuff like that? You know, you lose your spot in the game basically because it doesn't have the 100% access to Game Circle that it should, even though Amazon and BlackBerry have this partnership. So, you know, I just wanted to point that out there. That's at least one part of how Apple survives without those Google services, because they have all of their own secondary services that they're making use of.
With that ecosystem they bring, as Chris highlights, you know, they can avoid atrophy. You know, they can stop any breakdown from within and just build upon what they have in their little garden, so to speak. Whereas, as Chris made a great mention of, BlackBerry is literally killing off a lot of those peripherals. Score Loop was awesome. Score Loop was cross-platform, right? And now it no longer is here. Well, we kind of look at the conversation and we look at where we're kind of going with it and kind of the end-all where we're at. How do you embrace Google without sliding Amazon? You know, you invite this partner in to bring Android applications, but then you just want to supersede them a year later with another solution. Again, it's going to be a very interesting conversation in the management teams and operations when they really look to see how they can do this. And the only way they can really do it is to cannibalize BB10 in the process, and that is obviously what we don't want. But how do you guys feel about, we talked about this a little bit earlier, an Android device that's a BlackBerry, and then a BB10 device that is also a BlackBerry? Do you think that that's going to really tarnish BB10? I mean, in my opinion, native and BB10 died in terms of growth when they killed the development of their really, like the QNX and the Cascades and whatnot. When they brought Amazon in, it's like, okay, we're giving up on apps, right? We're not going to pursue native developers in the same way we were. So in the same sense, they're almost not going to pursue their own device development and OS development in the same sense. You look at 3.2 and likely subsequent OSs, all of it is so focused on security and privacy. I mean, if you go into 10.3.2 and you look at the privacy section, there's like 4 new options there that weren't there before. But you go other places of the OS, there's nothing. Browser, now there's a private browser. You know, everything seems for BB10 like it's driving in this very enterprise, non-consumer way. And it's getting a lot of us disheartened. I know, you know, Brandon had his article the other day, his editorial, and it touched on a lot of what we talked about last Upstream and kind of brought it all together in a cohesive verbalization of kind of how we feel, but we don't want to, right? We don't want to take a dump on the Leap. We don't want to take a dump on, you know, native developers. I mean, we have 2 native developers here, you know? We want to support the platform as best we can and have tools to evangelize and promote it. But imagine how much easier that becomes when there's now just a consumer option. You like BlackBerry, you like some of these productive features that Darius mentioned, well, now there's actually an OS that's built for you, and it has all the apps. How do you do it, you know? How do you do it and make good compromises where you don't shut out partners while embracing others? Anyway, very interesting conversation. We'll move on from there, and we'll talk a little bit more about the Milken Institute and some of the stuff that was announced there. John Chen, in another interview, talked about devices and what he saw potentially coming to light this year in 2015. He mentioned absolutely the Leap is already in market. That's our flagship runner for the mid-range all-touch segment. Again, it is that device for fleet upgrades, fleet renewals. Sell it low, sell it a lot, and make sure that gets saturated out there. And then we have the slider device toward the end of the year. we've gone 4 devices a year, and now we're slowing down. And it seems almost in the same sense that the OS development for BB10 has also slowed down in a sense, right? By this time, we should see what 10.4 looks like, right? This time last year in February, we had 10.3 already. The red variant, it was super crazy, whatever. But we don't have anything like that. And I know John Chen has talked about, cutting down on leaks and all this.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a lot going on that's just under the rug, so to speak. But again, it seems like there's really a transition going on in terms of applications development and software, where their focus is definitely not on what it used to be. With that being said, right, we have a device hardware roadmap that maybe only has 1 or 2 new devices. We have perhaps the key-in, which is going to be that Porsche design passport. But I think Chris mentioned this, it's the same thing, it's a passport. It's a device that came out September of last year, By the time it comes out, it's going to be old. New, but old. Just like the P9983 graphite,
And of course,
old, but
small audience.
Exactly.
Not everybody is going to have, $2,000 to pop out on that passport, which they basically already own anyways, So.
And that's kind of like their turnaround frame, anyways, on Porsche design devices. It's like a year after its initial release. So I really kind of hate that it's even counted as a device on the roadmap, to be honest with you, because I mean, it's a BlackBerry device, but I feel like it's not a BlackBerry device at the same time. It's somebody else's twist on it, and it's as you said, it's a small audience. I don't know. It's just they're kind of annoying.
Big profit audience, but it's still a small audience.
Right.
In the grand scheme of things, of what most people, if like an outsider looking at BlackBerry, the Porsche design devices aren't even like a blip on the radar when it comes to viewing the company as a whole, or even as someone who's part of that ecosystem. It's not even like a blip on it if you're a developer. It's not a blip on it if you're a consumer. It's not a blip on it if you're if you're just someone analyzing the company. I mean, it's a product that's there. It's a status symbol. They keep those products there for BlackBerry, but it's not necessarily. I could be wrong in this, but my impression that it's not necessarily that significant of a product in terms of their entire.
No, they're probably not making much money from it either, and like it's kind of funny because my brother started watching House of Cards, and in season 1 one of the guys has a Porsche design, the 9930 or the 9900 I think, and I point out to him because my brother likes BlackBerry. It's like, oh hey look, he's got the Porsche design BlackBerry. My brother's like, Porsche designed a BlackBerry, like the car company?
That exists.
Yeah, like so, like the general person has no idea that even exists. Just probably the wealthy people know of it, which is kind of weird because what kind of status symbol is that if the general person doesn't even recognize it as being the Porsche expensive? Like, what kind of status symbol is it if you don't recognize Gucci, right? Like, it's kind of weird. I don't know.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, man.
I mean, it's like the thing is like Porsche design. I mean, they of course like if for just general consensus, like they design a ton of things. I mean, if you look on their channel, you see that they do so many other things. So I think people are familiar with Porsche design, and I'm not saying that's like a large number of people, but people know what, like, if you're into design and whatnot, then I'm sure you kind of have heard of Porsche design. But as far as knowing that they do specifically BlackBerry devices, yeah, that's like clearly off the radar.
Bro, they have a $2,000 hookah.
Right.
I was just about to say that. I was like, Chris elucidated me to a Porsche design hookah. It's smart, connected, NFC capable. Can
I was like,
air pressure in your
baddest ass hookah ever.
Yeah, I want it. I really want it. Like as soon as I seen it, I was like, I need one of those, bro. That is awesome.
But like, who's gonna take that? Like, I'm gonna go outside with that. Like, no, I'm gonna like keep that in a locked vault somewhere where it never gets seen. But, again, we're talking about the hardware roadmap here, and don't think of it as a bad thing for those watching, right? Just because you're getting less devices, they're probably putting a lot more time into building those devices, the marketing strategy behind making them successful, etc., right? If you're just running through, tossing devices, hoping something sticks, that's not smart. That's not good business. That's wasteful on operations. So if you can really hone in and say, this is our device, this is its market, you can really drive and make those devices profitable. That being said, I mean, you sell 25 Leaps and one P9984, you probably make about the same amount of money, so...
I think Chen's comments basically lead to, like, these are the devices that we have upcoming. These are the ones that we know of. They may come this year. They may not come this year. They'll come basically when they're ready. I think that was pretty much the point that he was getting across in terms of like, you know, he didn't necessarily, you know, I don't think that you could say that like it was a delay or anything like that. It's a conscious decision to basically hold some of those devices back until the timing is appropriate, because he's managing the inventory levels, you know, the way that he is at this point in time, so that they don't have too much inventory. They don't have stuff just sitting around, laying in some warehouse somewhere, it's waiting to be bought that, you know, potentially may not be bought. You know, I think that's what he was trying to get across when he actually said the comments about in the device terms for release dates and stuff like that. I think it probably just went a little bit too far, like people looking into it a little bit too much. But you know.
John Chen's always been a CEO as well to underestimate and then over-deliver, right? So he wants to set up a perception where, you know, you're only going to get 2 devices this year, you know, and those other ones are going to come when they're ready, but he'll probably stick to his guns and actually bring those devices one way or another, right?
Yeah, it seems like a very methodical approach. Like he knew exactly what he was doing. There you go.
He's so on point. I love hearing him speak because he speaks as if, you know, the path is so clear ahead. He's like, no, this is what I'm doing. Here's where we're headed, you know? And for us on the outside looking at it, especially from the consumer side, you know, we have questions still. So we're going to see how that execution comes. I know personally, and I kind of wanted to gauge you guys here as we transition into a talk about the healthcare in John Chen and Patrick's conversation that they had therein. But what do you guys feel about devices and the way that they're going to head forward? And what I mean by that question is, do you really think that there's going to be a real focus for these devices to be seen and marketed in a general sense? I mean, you have like a prosumer niche, right? And then you have like an enterprise focus. So what about that gray area, you know? What do you do about the rest of it that's not really spoken to from a marketing and or brand awareness perspective? Do you guys really think that they're going to be able to deliver on that while they diversify their software offering? Brandon's argument in his article more or less was, you've got great software, but people don't know about it. So again, it's the same kind of problem. You come out with a brand new OS, it runs Android, it has all these cool services that are BlackBerry built with BlackBerry security. How do you get that brand awareness out there so people can actually engage with it? Is it a grassroots thing, or is it a, you know, higher level marketing that trickles down?
Well, sorry, and that was one of the things I was trying to touch on essentially, is that sometimes everybody looks at it and they say, oh, it's a marketing issue. They got to market it and attract new people. But, you know, if you focus on the people that are there already, sometimes with a little bit of effort, you can get those people to do the marketing for you. That's basically one of the aspects I was touching on. Go ahead, UB.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. Brandon, that was a great article, by the way. I enjoyed reading it. For people, well, no one knows, but I contacted Brandon, and I was thinking of doing a collaboration with him on the editorial. But there's other reasons why I didn't. But anyway, in response to like what James is saying, I do know that BlackBerry does care very much, and they are working on it. What it is exactly is still being sorted out, but they're very much aware of the lackluster performance that they have marketing-wise. They're very aware of the lack of communication and the confusion between consumers, prosumers, and their products and services. They're well aware of that. There's some things going on in the background, but it's not helping. It's still not helping. It needs to be sorted out ASAP, and it's encouraging that they at least acknowledge it. They hear everybody, and they're working on it. They're making, you know, they're doing their best to make the appropriate maneuvers to get their marketing strategy on par with what it ought to be with their products and services, because you got great stuff coming out, and no one knows what they are. Brandon touched base on excellent points. For those who haven't read it, you should go on BerryFlow and read it, and it's just accurate, you know. It's just accurate. But in defense, they're well aware. They are working on it. No timetable though.
No timetable on the turnaround, right? John Chen's been in a year. In 5 years when he's done, right? I think they're going to be strong again in enterprise, strong in software. and then we might see more of that other focus we're looking for. But you got to build there, and part of the road to build there is healthcare. Healthcare seems to be one of the major verticals that they want to head into. Not only did they build the mHealth box to connect medical devices into the IoT through BlackBerry's infrastructure, but as well, they've got now the genomics browser, which they're plumbing through on passport devices, which can literally laser in on different anomalies on the cellular level. Just really cool stuff in terms of the growth and where they can take this. But again, the issue underlining all of that is going to be security, right? Medical records. I think hundreds of millions a year are tarnished by online hackers and different sources that end up letting that information get out. So information security is going to be a prevailing thing moving forward. As many hands as BlackBerry can have in helping that security exchange happen, the more money they can make, right? I'm excited to see where they're going to go. The Nant Health system alone touches 3 million lives in the United States alone. So it's going to be very interesting to see how they can scale that, broaden it, and then further work to monetize it. Did any of you guys happen to catch the Healthcare in the Digital Age panel that was done with Dr. Patrick Soon-Shiong of Nant Health? We had John Chen from BlackBerry and a couple other bigwigs in the healthcare space talking about the problems, talking about potential solutions, and where they see the market being. What were some of you guys' input from it? Did you like the panel? It was interesting to see BlackBerry there, and it seems like some interesting kind of social qualms going back and forth with some users not on a BlackBerry who probably should be.
Yeah, he didn't talk too much though. I skipped around and I watched the part where he mainly talked, and I think out of the whole thing he probably talked for a total of like 7 minutes out of like the 57-minute thing.
Yeah.
But it was interesting, to an extent.
I mean,
I'm not gonna lie, I watched it but didn't understand 90% of it. So.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't anything new. A lot of the stuff they talked about were things that they've been beating into our heads for the past few months in terms of their where they see QNX's place in the healthcare industry and what they foresee will happen in the healthcare industry. So it wasn't anything really new. It's just nice to see them out there, getting some exposure so that more people draw links between BlackBerry and the healthcare industry.
Yeah, the one thing I can say is like they, when you look at like the other companies, Samsung and Apple, and how they are kind of trying to step into the whole health spectrum of it, it's like they really sound like they know what they're talking about in terms of really utilizing QNX to help patients and help them as well in terms of research and furthering the health world. It's like you kind of see these apps that are like heart monitors tracking how many calories you burn, whatever. It's kind of like, okay, that's pretty basic application that you have, but these guys are really they really want to pioneer in terms of getting this into the consumer's hands and allowing them to see things on a more in-depth ratio, so to speak. And that's what I really like. And it doesn't sound like they're rushing it at all either. It's just kind of like, they're saying like it's coming along fine. We're still continuing to work with it on a day-by-day basis. And that's what you kind of have to appreciate those things. You're not just giving it to people and saying, here it is, and it's half-baked. It's really something they're taking the time to working with. They demo it, give you a glance of it, to show you that, hey, we really are working on this and these are the steps we took, but we want to give, pretty much when we give it to you, we don't want to say that, oh my God, this is great, but there's so much room for improvement. They want to give it to you and be like, well, what can I not do with it? So it kind of gives you a little confidence actually when you sit and listen to them, even though you may not understand a lot of the medical relations with it, but it does sound good for the most part though.
Yeah, I think it was great that he was there, his presence, showing support, showing the collaboration, showing the partnerships. It's active, it's live, it's evolving. I don't think this is something they could deliver half-baked even if they wanted to, because there's just so many, it's such an enormous task and so many people involved and such an enormous amount of money involved. So it'll mature when it matures, and they'll keep people, educated as it keeps moving forward. And it's an exciting development. We got the gimmick. Darius was just mentioning, like, with the smartwatches and stuff and heartbeat, like whatever.
Yeah, it's easy. It's like anyone can do that.
Anyone can do that, pending if you have a tattoo or not. Anyone knows what the deal with that is?
I
So
don't know.
you read
I don't.
about that? Like it doesn't work if you have like a tattoo or
Yeah,
something.
no, I heard that. It's like Tattoo Gate. Yeah, it's like the new one with
It's the
the
green
Tattoo.
avatar.
laser.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh.
really. They call it Tattoo Gate. It's kind of crazy. But a guy, he had the watch on and it couldn't read his pulse correctly because of his tattoos. And
It's the
I've
green
heard,
lasers that are used.
Yeah.
yeah,
And as much as everybody will probably shit on me for saying it's not just an Apple thing, their Fitbits have the exact same problem because they
right.
use green lasers.
Just an embedded problem. Maybe they can get some further development there because a lot of these devices are going to start being connected together, right? So I can sit down on my laptop and bam, there's my heart rate from the jog I just did, and maybe some analytics from it. But it's not contained on one app, you know. It's spread across multiple applications. It's sent over to my doctor so he knows I'm doing my exercise, that you know, for my rehabilitation, etc.
And now the
All of this can
world
work
will know.
together, you know, make it efficient, make it productive.
The world will know how stressful everyone's job is, and they're gonna start posting how stressed everyone's heart
There's
rate.
gonna be an app, social network around that. Yeah, you're right, man.
They're gonna be like, "How stressful is your job?" And everyone's gonna upload their daily data.
Stressnetwork.com or something.
Stressed out.
Someone right now is like, "Great
Everybody's
idea."
gonna know how much physical exercise I don't get.
Refrigerator walks, burning calories to then to intake calories,
Yeah.
my man. You know, we talk about healthcare, right? And it seems that healthcare has a really strict loyalty to security. Everyone wants that to be such a secure arena, right? You don't want patient medical records, their private and personal inner workings, who they are on a medical level, to be out there for people to look at, pine, and absorb. So security seems to have a very tightly knit loyalty with medical, and as well automotive, right? The key focus of what an automotive is transportation that is secure. I can get on a bike if I want to go somewhere, right? But if something hits me, I'm more likely to survive that car accident than being on a bike, you know? Again, it's all about the security layers, and BlackBerry working on that bottom line to really enhance those different verticals. So when we talk about loyalty, it's great to see BlackBerry taking some of their marketing initiatives, focusing them on the areas that they're doing well, like in India, and focusing again on a loyalty program they've just rolled out to help give some users some of their money back when they purchase a new BlackBerry 10 device. Again, if you can work on that baseline, your verticals can expand. What do you guys think about a loyalty program? I wish I was in India right now because my device would have been cheaper by quite a bit, right?
I think the loyalty programs are good, and they keep popping up for places like India and Indonesia and such like that. And I think it's great to help them push out some devices and get some money back because it seems as though that the prices, at least judging from some of the comments, the prices may be a little bit higher in those regions based on what some of the competitors are offering. You know, so there really has been like a groundswell of like Android takeover in those regions, low cost Android devices. So BlackBerry needs to do something in terms of that. So I think rolling out the loyalty programs and stuff like that are always a good thing to have. You know, I just wish that they would actually do something like that in North America as well. I mean, we do have I say that, but we do have the sale right now. Is you know, you can get up to what is it, like 40% off of any BlackBerry 10 device right now, at least the new ones, on Shop BlackBerry. But you know, I don't know if that actually classifies as like a loyalty program or anything like that. But
Yeah, I was gonna say it's kind of like you you don't want to sound like ungrateful because we've been getting a lot of sales on BlackBerry on shopblackberry.com, excuse me, for a while. Like even from the original launch of the Passport, what was it, like a week? The next week, it was marked down $100.
yeah,
So it's like you really can't complain. But I just feel like the loyalty program for BlackBerry. This is my thing when they do those little incentives for other countries or other regions. It's like do it across the board. And I feel like you would just reap and see so much more from it instead of doing it in one specific region and kind of testing it out. If you just do it across the board, then like just see.
I agree. It's a little tough though because you when they do anything here in the U.S., it completely gets the media has their field day with it and
Yeah.
twist everything. They make it really bad.
I can read the Verge article right now. BlackBerry offers U.S. users 10,000 rupees off devices and shop BlackBerry.
I guess my
Like,
I guess
they do it in India. They got a massive market there. There's a lot of love for BlackBerry already there. So it's like no harm, no foul. Like it's like home territory for them. They go and do anything in the States here, and it's just bad. For some reason, it's always spun really bad. And I don't think the marketing is there to even have some sort of campaign, loyalty program campaign that will at least communicate and help people even be aware that BlackBerry has a loyalty program, what it is, and what it offers.
I think it comes to wording though as well, because realistically, what is the India loyalty program? Basically a sale, right? It lowered the pricing, right?
Yeah.
So why couldn't BlackBerry just say, yeah, we're having a loyalty program, we're launching a loyalty program?
Because
no one's
loyal to BlackBerry here in America.
Yeah, it's true, but I don't know. It just seems like the wording would be better. What would you be more willing to share as a user, like, to your friends? Would you be willing to share like a loyalty program, or would you be willing to share like a sale? Hey, BlackBerry's having a sale, or sign up for the BlackBerry loyalty program.
You made a good point that like in India, they've got more older users who are on like some of the legacy devices.
Yeah.
So for them, it's more of loyalty. Like we still have users on those older devices. In the States, how many BBOS devices do you see? Few and far between, let alone BB10. So you're right. Marketing will define that, absolutely, Chris.
I guess my question with regards to loyalty programs is like, how does this turn into profit for BlackBerry? They have, an extra million users on their BlackBerry devices. Unless they have services that they can sell to these people, how are they going to make recurring money from people purchasing a BlackBerry 10 device in the consumer space? People buy iPhones, buy Android devices, and Apple and Google make money off of those services. But all the services that we're seeing coming from BlackBerry have a strict enterprise focus. So it's like, sure, you've got maybe 1 million people who buy a device off of a loyalty program, but what's really gonna, give them more money to make that worthwhile? And I think that's maybe one of the reasons why we don't see it more often.
That's a completely valid point, and I think the simple answer is just adoption. I think BlackBerry is just trying to get as many BB10 phones out there in people's hands as possible by any means necessary. The more phones mean a stronger voice.
It's just a market. It is honestly a marketing source. So if they were able to break even on hardware sales, sure, it's a lot of work to do it, but if you're breaking even, then there's some word of mouth that's going to go around from people buying it, actually showing up in carrier stores, just being there. So yes, we don't need to make an insane amount of money from hardware. Focus on software. Just be known. It is a marketing avenue that at least people will see.
They'll take a hit on the margins if they can get many more people holding and walking around with BB10 devices.
Completely agree.
Or even just calculate it as owning a BlackBerry 10 device. It doesn't matter if it's like stuck in the drawer that nobody ever uses. That still counts.
That throw out. Yeah.
Nah, the drawer devices don't count. If anything,
how many do you have, James? How many drawer devices? I
probably have like 1% of Florida's entire populace of BlackBerry 10 devices. I'm sure like Brian's watching right now somewhere, and he's like, I've got some too. It's just an interesting conversation, right? Loyalty is something that BlackBerry's kind of been struggling with, even from its own users. Some users, like over this past year, they just got frustrated. They've gotten left in the dust. They feel there's no Z10 upgrade, the app problem, so I'm gonna look at something else. So there's still some things that they have to work on to really start bridging that gap. But absolutely, it's like a diagonal.
One of those too.
I mean, from a Z10 user perspective, yes, it's an upgrade, right? It is. You have a bigger screen, bigger battery, and that's really all you cared about on the Z10.
Yeah.
Z3 users definitely an upgrade.
Well, yeah.
Not numerically speaking, but it's funny that they went to such a low resolution on the Z3, and they've literally never done a device like that since, in terms of resolution.
Yeah.
And if memory serves, the Leap devices not built by Foxconn. It's built by the same people who built the Classic, correct?
Yeah, I
It
think
was an
so.
Indonesian manufacturer, I believe, or a Taiwanese. So it's like you have this Foxconn deal, yet you've only ever built one device with them. Are you getting parts from them? Is that like the partnership? I thought they were going to be building your devices for you. Maybe again, maybe they've got something cooking. Maybe when they build that Android OS thing they might be building, now they have a low end device that they can work to saturate at very low margins, very low threshold to build. But definitely interesting stuff going on with the loyalty program there. We talked about Leap. You both were holding up your Leaps. How do you guys like them? Do you think that the rollout is doing well? I mean, we just saw it as suggested for India March the 7th. We've seen initial rollout for the UK. Is this a device that's going to do well as something like the Z10 did?
I don't think we're gonna ever see them out in. Look, Alex is like walking away, looking for
I'm
him.
listening.
I don't think I'm gonna see much of the Leap around in public. We all know that it was specifically designed for that, enterprise entry level type of thing. I like the Leap a lot. Lily Beth Perez, that music artist that some of the BerryFlow team knows, she has a Z30 for a while now. And when she fooled around with the Leap, she liked it even more than the Z30. So I like the device as well. It's just a great build, understated, but very, very nice. Definitely very nice. It'd be nice to see a few of them in some carrier stores. I don't know. I don't know if they even have a strategy to push it out in any capacity outside of that enterprise element. But
It's kind of funny because more like this is something I want to bring up. Verizon, for instance, now they're really trying to remove themselves from subsidizing phones because they're in a very interesting position where, say, when the new iPhone comes out, if you have millions of people buying iPhones and they're only giving you $200 for the iPhone, Verizon is actually losing a ton of money up front. Over the course of the 2 years, they make their money back, but it is making their revenue stream very volatile, and they don't like that. So they, like, more and more companies, these carriers are moving away from wanting to subsidize phones. So at that point, carriers might become less and less important in the space of buying phones. So when, that it's kind of interesting. Right now, it's very important to focus on carriers for selling phones because contracts and getting the subsidized rate is a big deal. But now that they're actually reducing your contract price, if your contract is up, finally, this happened at the beginning of the year. So if you're on Verizon, go opt in for it. It's BS because you have to opt into it, but you can start getting discounts off your bill. But then carriers just aren't as important at that point. But people need to understand that they will have to buy phones for $500 up front rather than over the course of 2 years.
It's a
Yeah.
funny dynamic because our telecommunications companies are becoming more and more just, internet providers.
Yes.
Dumb pipes.
And if you think about
Exactly.
it, you don't buy your laptop from Rogers or Time Warner. You buy your laptop on its own, and then you just hook into those systems. And I think that's what we're starting to see with mobile devices, is that we're going to see more and more people just picking and choosing what device they want, and then just plugging into that internet service.
Exactly.
I mean, it's the carriers. They like that anyways. They don't they don't want to be bitten by the subsidiary or unsubsidized, situation that they have to get with the phones, and that's been the whole big plan of why they're creating these get the phone now, pay on it every month because they want to get their money back on the back end, so to speak. So they don't care if you buy your phone outright. It saves them the headache, I should say, in the long run. But
They do like you're stuck on them though. That's
yeah,
the thing. Like a 2-year contract means you are forced to stay with them for 2 years. So
and
it's trade-off.
and they don't really care because they already know that you're with me for a reason. Like half of the people that are on AT&T are more than likely grandfathered in with their data plan, like myself, and you're not gonna leave. I mean, it's just like I'm never leaving AT&T. I'm not leaving AT&T until they say you cannot have your unlimited data
Those are
plan.
famous last words, bro. Famous
Right.
last words. Alex talked about being stuck, but he could go to T-Mobile and they'll pay him and his whole family out of that contract.
Right.
Oh,
And
whatever, Alex.
No.
it's like, what's the purpose of leaving? But I mean, to me, like I already said, the leap, just to get back to the leap, I just felt like it's a device. I know that it was designed for enterprise users. That's what Chidi said. But the point of the fact is that if that device doesn't make it to carriers, especially with that price point, I don't see no reason for it. I really don't. I just feel like it's a purposeless device. In all honesty, it really is. It's a purposeless device. It's nothing but a relaunch of a Z10 with a larger size screen. Put it on carriers. Put it across the board on carriers, and just stop playing around with it. Try to get something from it. I mean, I don't know.
Darius, man, you gotta lock your doors tonight. People are gonna come for you for that.
Hide your wife.
I just want to point out, Canada is pretty much one of the only places that it hasn't necessarily been announced for. Just think about that. Canada has been left off the list thus far. So they rolled it out in the UK, the Germany, so on and so forth. But Canada hasn't made any announcements. They basically just said coming soon for Canada. Why is that? I think they're actually working carrier agreements in Canada to actually get it on Rogers and Bell and Telus and so on and so forth. So at least I have faith that at least some carriers will pick it up and put it on their services.
That'd be nice.
I don't think it's going to sell as much.
It'd be nice to just see it. See a portfolio of devices. Small, classic, all touch, passport. Simple.
I don't know. This whole talk about the carriers and contracts, and it's part of a larger conversation that obviously we can't have now. But I'm very interested to see what the future of carriers and how they deal with consumers, because it's changing. It's an old paradigm, and we're in a big transition now.
Yep.
And it'll be interesting to see where they're going to get their revenue, how they're going to evolve their business.
It's going to be data, and it sucks.
Right. If we're going to be looking at like the whole Blockbuster to Netflix changeover.
Exactly.
You got like the old carriers, and if you refusing to change and anticipate, you're going to get left behind, my friends.
I'm done with carriers. I have my plan, and I haven't bought a device from carriers, at least from Rogers, in quite a few years. So they hold me. They hold me for nothing.
Yep.
I'm basically paying them for my data plan and my phone usage at this point. But as far as I'm concerned, I could just leave tomorrow if they decided to screw me over, because I haven't bought a device from them in quite some time.
Right.
I love how the consumers are winning.
My last device was my Z10. That was when I got back from Korea, and I was clearly due for an upgrade. I just bought a Z30 today, and I'm sure I'll be just cashing out for the slider when it comes out. I just look at it like I don't see a purpose of locking myself into anything with AT&T. It's just like it's not worth it with carriers nowadays. No matter who you are, no matter what incentives you are offering me, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter nowadays.
The purpose up until the beginning of the year was you were essentially an idiot to let your contract run out on a carrier and not upgrade your phone. Because when your contract ran out, they were still charging you as if you were paying for a subsidized phone. Mm-hmm. So up until January of this year, and I don't think they even have it on Canadian carriers yet. It's just Verizon and AT&T, from what I know. They now drop your price down $25 per line per contract. So our bill just dropped from $396 to $196 because all of us are off contract. So up until right now is where it makes sense finally. So we're going to buy phones off contract now. We are not going to make a 2-year contract to get a subsidized phone for the same price and be stuck with them.
I suggest everybody can. Everybody.
Exactly.
That's
the total cost of ownership equals out to be less, no matter how you work it out. Yes, it really does suck having to fork over $600, $700, but your total cost of ownership it goes down, and it's a long-term process to actually save money. But once you get out of that system, you remain in control at that point.
Right.
You can just pack your bags and leave and go wherever the hell you want.
And the other thing is, Jane, and I just want to hit on it real quick, James, because I know you want to kill this one, but I just turned off my insurance through Assurion, and that saved me like $8. I pay like $80 flat now with AT&T, and that's unlimited data. And not to mention that my 2-year contract that I'm in ends in June, so I would assume it gets a little more cheaper. But it's like, why even have insurance on phones when you have all these other, the OEMs like BlackBerry now that offer the pretty much the insurance plans of their own. Apple does it, ACC is doing it. And then I just looked at it as like, what is the major thing that I'll be worried about? One, my phone is under warranty, so if something happens to it, I can always send it back. Two, if anything happens, it's more than likely going to be the screen crack. If I had insurance, I'm going to end up paying the same amount through a deductible than I would going to the store down the street that repairs my phone for the same exact amount. And not to mention, if I buy the digitizer myself, that even offsets the cost of it.
It
So
depends how
whoever
pumped
knows
you are.
person, though.
Send it to Kevin to
Tim knows
repair
that.
it.
Yeah.
Overall, thank God for shopblackberry.com and their partnership with
Exactly.
Amazon to push their devices. You know,
Exactly.
get the carriers, make the profit yourself.
And
Yep.
in that end, guys, if you have a BlackBerry 10 device, go to the beta zone, fill out the survey, try to get it on the beta, give them some feedback because they
Please.
need it.
They
Give
do.
them that feedback. That's available in beta zone. They announced an extended beta, so hopefully you can get an invite there. But unlocked seems to be the way of the future, and I'm sure that's a conversation we'll be expounding on our next Upstream. Really appreciate everyone coming on this evening. Jubei came in around 8:30 to tag along on the conversation as well. Great to have you here, Jubei.
Nice to be here. I was having yogurt in case anyone was curious.
Anyway, guys, you have a great rest of your day. We'll see you next weekend.
Take
Later.
care.